Hello and welcome to the Satluj TV podcast. In last week's podcast, we put India's economic stability under the microscope and discovered all is not well in the subcontinent. The failing rupee and Modi's isolationist policies are seeing India falling far behind its regional rival China. It is evident that cultural values significantly shape economic and political development of a nation. Ethical principles like transparent administration, accountable leadership, equal rights, robust judicial systems, even human capital investment, and of course diaspora-linked entrepreneurship create the cultural infrastructure necessary for a high-capacity and successful economy. A key reason why India is failing, and a nation like Khalistan will inevitably thrive. To discuss this in more detail, I'm joined today by our regular guest, Dr. Gurinder Singh Grewal, MD. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us once again today.
Good morning, Angus. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we will continue the subject we started a couple of times before. So what I'm going to talk today, beyond GDP per capita measuring individual benefit from government spending. We're going to talk something about economics, numbers, then why successful or better economical countries are doing better compared to the other. What's the reason behind that? And there's some literature on that we will go through briefly, and people can read more detail if they want to. And then we're going to see what are the effects behind the successful economy versus the low successful economy. And then we're going to see how the Khalistan will be and what should Khalistan, my free country, can adopt and learn from the facts that we will discuss. So what is GDP? GDP is a gross domestic product. So it's output and social output and all the products, which is industrial output, people's output, everything country does in a given year. It serves a good model comparing one country to the other, but it does not help how does this affect individually. So GDP per capita shows economic productivity. Government spending per capita, which I'm going to get into, I think is a better model to understand things. It's not something statistical model. It's just my way of understanding what's happening, and I try to analyze that, compare different countries. So what is the problem with the GDPs? Simon Kuznets has explained the welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from measure of a nation's income. Despite the early caution, GDP per capita remains central to comparative analysis. It doesn't do any good for any individual to understand how a nation's economy affects them. But yeah, you can compare India, Pakistan, US, England, and all that. So let's take example of GDP. Per capita GDP. Per capita GDP is the total GDP divided by the population of that country in the middle of the year. So per person, how much is the GDP? Let's analyze how defective this analysis is. So let's say we have a 10 persons and one person earns $1 million and next 9 earn $1,000 a year. So total income is 1,009,000. Per capita GDP is $100,900. So look at this. It doesn't explain anything that people can learn or benefit. So one guy is making $1 million, the other making $1,000. They look like they are all rich, but they are not. 90% of the population is poor. They're only making $1,000. So this is not helping. So what I try to do to learn myself, I said, let's see what the government budget for that year is. Okay, we will get into comparison and divide that with the population. So what is the government spending per citizen in that year And then we'll see how much of that goes into different services. So this shows us what they are doing in administrative capability, infrastructure, defense, public health, education system, research and development. So let's go to then why we're doing this. This is the money government spends shows how this affects the society. This spending then can be related to the outcome measures like life expectancy, infant mortality, literacy and education attainment, poverty reduction, access to sanitation, clear water, etc. So by analyzing what government spends per citizen in that year, I think we get some better idea comparing the different countries and the output. So I chose 10 countries in this, and their budget for that year 2025 in billions divided by the population. So Australia, so we're going to go through alphabetically, okay? So we don't need to go through all the numbers. So if we use that matrix, Australia spends 18,000 roughly dollars per citizen in last year's budget, okay? And Canada did 8,800, China did 2,800, France did 6,000 something, India did 580, roughly. Japan did 6,200. Pakistan did only 218. Russia did 3,500. I'm just using gross numbers. UK, the best, did $26,333, and USA is the second one, 20,200 something. Okay. So this shows how much money in their budget these 10 countries spend on per person. We calculate per person. So, this is a very gross way of analyzing. You can't go to every detail, but let's say how much of that went into social services. Compare each country. Australia did 45%. Canada spent 50% on social services. China did 35%. India 30%. Pakistan 25%. UK 48%, and USA is 45%. Look at this, how much money these advanced countries are spending on social services. No wonder everybody wants to migrate there, because there is a system which helps people somewhat equally, right? How much per person the defense each country is spending? Australia is spending 6%. United States spending 13%, Russia spending 20%, and Pakistan spending 20%. Look at the amount of actual money is very small, even though like Pakistan spent 20%, but it's only $44 per person they're spending in defense. UK spends 1,800, and US spends 2,600. And Russia spends 700. Okay, so per person distribution on defense, US, UK are highest, Australia is higher. So because they don't have enough money, so they are not spending enough on defense. So this is how we can compare. Let's say the healthcare. Okay, healthcare, Australia is spending 24%. Canada spending 28%, France spends 26% of their per capita per person spending, and Japan does 23%. Look at these advanced countries, how much money of the budget is going into healthcare. Look at the India, 8%, Pakistan 5%, Russia 8%. Okay, Russia is looks powerful country, but inside the country, what are they doing for their citizens? Healthcare, very poor. UK, 29% and USA 27%. Research and development. Okay, research and development, most of the advanced countries we talked are 2%, Japan is 3%, USA is 3%, India is 1%, Pakistan is 0.5%. So what do we learn from these numbers? How much of the government budget is being spent per citizen, and how much of that is going to social services, health, and research and development determines how the people are happy, how good the life is there. And to analyze this further, I think we're going to talk about a book, okay? In 1999, Harvard University had a symposium on culture matters. So this book came in 2000. Just walking in Costco, they used to have a lot of books there one time. I picked up this book thinking I will read a story of different cultures, but it turned out to be much different. So this is a book of a symposium. There are 10 essays, all by scholars, probably very high caliber senior professors, and each is analyzing the advanced countries versus the low-income countries, and what is the reason behind that. So there are 10 chapters. First one, we'll go to the summary together, but I'm going to say the first chapter is by Lawrence Harrison. It's a Why Culture Matters, okay? Chapter 2 is Social Capital and Development. Chapter 3 is Culture Makes Almost All the Differences, okay? We will go into this further. According to this, the high values Britain and offshoot societies are doing better where people migrated from these countries like Canada, US, Australia. So chapter 4 is on attitudes, values, beliefs, and microeconomics and prosperity. And chapter 5 is on culture and democracy. And chapter 6 is a culture and democracy. Chapter 7 is a culture and underdevelopment in the United States. Chapter 8 is talking about Latin America, comparing countries in South America where they have agrarian culture and prosperity, where they center control, versus the Anglo-American countries where they decentralized control. This is a very interesting analysis, okay? Chapter 9 talks about East Asia and Confucianism. So basically, how Confucius philosophy has affected the culture in Asian, mostly Chinese culture. So chapter 10 is on religion and cultural system. This book further analyzes religion as a long-term shape of value. Excuse me. So in this chapter, there's some reference to Sikhism, briefly mentioned as a reformist activist tradition emphasizing discipline, community service, and equality. Furthermore, the Sikh diaspora is cited as an example of entrepreneurial adaptability within the pluralistic society though the discussion on this is limited. So anybody serious reader should read all the different things they have analyzed. So core theme across this book is culture influences institutions. So culture influences institutions. Institutions shape economic performance. Trust and the rule of law are central. Migration transmits cultural capital. So like people from Northern European countries with the new culture, which is a Protestant thinking, when they changed there and the people from there migrated, they are talking about migrated to the new world that is US, Canada, Australia, how they carry that culture with them, and that helps the prosperity. Religious traditions shape civic behavior. Cultural change is possible but gradual. So this book is very good to try to understand how culture might change the education, social norm, religion, and civic life. Why some countries are poor and some countries are not. How? So let us see what is the. We went through the table. I think if you can show the table again on the slides, we went through the table, then trying to understand the reason behind the people who have more social services, high income. So what do they have? They have high social trust. Citizen trust that taxes are honestly used, low tolerance for corruption, strong civil culture. So people are willing to pay high taxes, knowing that it benefits the society instead of trying tax evasion, which is very, very typical in Indian culture. Okay. Rule of law. Independent courts enforce contracts, equal application, predictable governance. So independent courts. So India doesn't have independent courts. Enforce contracts. In US, if I sign something on the paper, I am held responsible and I have to honor that contract. I can't say I didn't read it. That isn't my problem. Okay. So this is how the society works. Meritocracy, talent over patronage, professional bureaucracy, competitive education. So how the meritocracy? Let's say one example. And one time, the field hockey India was very good. They even used to win. But then what happened? They start selecting people who are related to high profile people instead of the good players. So they have not been able to catch up because it's not on a merit. So simple example. Long-term orientation, invest in health, infrastructure, R&D, and public education. So these high income countries, they have something. They're spending more on social services, health, and research. It's because of their culture, okay? Religion as an economic variable. Religion shapes moral norms, view on authority, work ethic, ethics, literacy, obligation, and trust. Religion shapes moral norms, views on authority, work ethic, literacy, obligation, and trust. So I'm going to give you one example. Yesterday or day before, there was video circulating. They took it off. One of the BJP leaders, a young man at one time, Hemanta, I think his name, has a gun in his hand. He's saying he sees a Muslim, he's going to shoot him. So then opposition parties started reacting to that. Finally, they took off the video. So this morning news I read in Bangladesh, they killed a Hindu businessman. So look what they're doing to each other. I'll give you another example. I don't know the time frame, but it's still not too long ago. There was a mosque or masjid burned in Boston area. One of the church reached them. They say, look, until you can build it, you use our facility. You pray mostly on Friday. We do on weekend. And they have been doing this now for a long time. Look at what I'm saying. The thinking and culture affects the society. So the people cannot tolerate somebody living next door to them because he doesn't pray like that, he doesn't believe like that. But at the same time, one religious institution is opening their door to the other. This is how the culture affects. That's why this book is very important, has changed my outlook also. Historical patterns. So this is the conclusion, how this happened. Protestant Europe, literacy to read scripture. Okay. Some religions only want to go to the institution and pray, but Protestant Europe emphasize literacy to read scripture, individual accountability before God, local church governance contributed to the rule of law and civic participation. Confucius, East Asia, very similar, discipline, education prioritized, respect for hierarchy, merit-based exams. Result, religion shaped economic culture, culture shaped institution, which shaped fiscal capacity. So let's compare to the why low per capita spending countries struggle. Low trust. They don't trust the government. Tax evasion is very common. When people file the tax, they want to cheat or see how they can save. This is, I think, even the government people in India do that. Many other places do that. Informal economy is large. Under the table economy is large, weak compliant because they don't trust the government. Patronage politics, political distribution of funds, and weak universal service system. So the politicians get preferential treatment. When Modi did demonetization, some of the people inside is already knew. They already converted their currency, but some of the other poor people lost everything they have. Institutional weakness, slow courts, poor contract enforcement, and bureaucratic inefficiency. Social fragmentation, identity conflicts, minority exclusion, and underutilization of talent. This is also very important. The people, because they are not like the BJP, they want to kill them, they can't progress, they cannot have good jobs. So at this point, I think in Indian parliament, there's hardly any Muslim member of parliament. Not too long ago, they used to be ministers in the central government. Okay, there were many problems, but at least there was some tolerance. Limited fiscal basis, large population with low per capita revenue. Okay, conclusion. So what conclusion we can draw from this book? Successful economies are built on certain enduring qualities: social trust, integrity in public life, rule of law, meritocracy, educational commitment, long-term orientation, inclusion and protection of religious freedom. These culture traits shape institutions, and institutions determine fiscal capacity and economic performance. So this is a very important conclusion. I think why we saying this, because my concern is some of the people who do not like the idea of Khalistan and trying to say, oh, it's going to be theocratic state. Sikhi is not a theocratic, okay? Sikhi is a tolerance. Sikh ethical tradition are based on kirt karni, honest work, vand chakna, social responsibility, seva, sarvat da pala, welfare of all, resilience and historic defense of freedom of conscience, which have guided both individual conduct and community organized through Sikh history. When these ethical principles are transmitted into modern governments, seen in transparent administration, accountability, leadership, equal rights, robust judicial system, human capital investment, diaspora-linked entrepreneurship, they create the culture infrastructure necessary for high capacity and economy. So look, in this sense, the success for any future Sikh majority state would depend not merely on identity, but on institutionalizing these values into rule-based government and inclusive economic policy where culture reinforces trust, integrity, and pluralism. The foundation of a prosperous and fiscally strong economy can emerge. So Khalistan is not going to be a theocratic state. Khalistan is going to be based on Sikhi principle. Like, US Constitution is very much like Sikhi principles. So Sikhs believe, our religion believe, that equality for all human beings are created equal. Everybody is equal. So freedom of religion is always has been in Sikh culture during Maharaj Ranjit Singh's. There was no forced conversion of any religions, even though Sikhs at that time were a minority in numbers, but they were very fair to everybody else. Education. Maharaj Ranjit Singh's rule is known for advancing the education system, best of his times, even better than some of the European countries were there, because the emphasis was on the Sikh principles. So I think I have said enough, and I want my fellow Sikhs who believe in Khalistan to learn how successful economic model there will be. We do not need government to tell us how to behave religiously, and we don't need to tell our neighbors how to practice their faith and religion. We need to practice our religion the best we can. So one of the discussion can be why these countries who are religious-based government are basically poor. Like take an example of India with a Hindu government, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. The government is religious, but look in the America, government or Canada, government is not religious, government is non-religious, but people are very religious, okay? This is what we need to learn. I need to be honest, I need to learn my religion. I don't need to force that on my neighbors, and my neighbor don't need to force on me. So this is the kind of society, this is going to be based upon the Sikh principle. The best example that we have, no, we have interfaith meetings in America, Canada, maybe in UK, I think you will know better. The best interfaith is started by Baba Nanak. He is the founder of it. Look at it. Who does he choose as his partner? Bhai Mardana. According to that tradition, considered low class. His religion is Muslim, he's a Muslim, religion is Islam. And they two get along and travel for 20, 22 years. This is the best example we have. If Baba Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, chose this interfaith tolerance, the Khalistan cannot be any different. If we are Sikhs, this is how our country is going to be. I think I said enough. If you have any question, we can discuss. I think it's very important. It looks very, I'm talking numbers, but I use the numbers to emphasize some ethical principles and some religious tolerance and all that.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Grell. That was a fascinating discussion. In fact, I'm just going to flash up. It did strike me with some of these figures that you had in your table. It's very striking. The one thing that really struck me on this on the slide where we look at the spending, the per capita spending, it is very clear that first world nations based on democratic principles are clearly spending a lot more per capita on their own citizens in terms of health and welfare, social spending. And as you rightly highlighted, it's very clear that India is really sits very very differently to that. And as you rightly had that theme running through the conversation, was that a nation's economy is built on cultural values. And it's very telling then that India, as we can see from this table here, its spending per capita sits so painfully low compared to Western democracies. But at the same time, we mustn't forget, Dr. Grewal, that India has a space program. It has cities that have high-rise towers. It has amazing technology. And yet, it has one of the largest poverty gaps on the planet. It actually has some of the worst poverty on the planet in the same nation that also has a space program. And I find that particularly striking.
Yeah, so because they are focused on Hindu Rashtra, they are not concerned with the welfare of everybody. Let me give you one good example that I'm familiar with. If you are in the United States, like I just retired, I'm working as a cardiologist, I am on call in the hospital. Somebody comes there with a heart attack, we call myocardial infarction. The hospital is not allowed to ask him how he's going to pay. Yes, they will have some ID check and have them sign something. But the treatment will proceed, and the goal is to open the artery less than 90 minutes, preferably 60 minutes. And we will be held accountable. Doctor like me is not allowed to ask, how are you going to pay me? The emphasis is this is a human being, came to the hospital, he needs a treatment, and treatment will be delivered. Everything else can follow later. Unless another person, this is a true story, my friend was visiting there. He was having chest pain. He went to the hospital. He's having a heart attack. Luckily, he was able to. They say, first you deposit the money, then we will treat you. Look at the contrast of the two cultures. By the time they will bring money from somewhere, I think he would have completed the heart attack and the muscle would have been damaged. So this is how society is affected by thinking, institutionalizing, and how the successful countries have changed that. And I think that since we are going to be a new country, we need to follow good example, successful example, not the failed system.
Indeed, I think that is really very clearly illustrates the difference between India and other nations. And of course, as you rightly said, Khalistan will be based and be founded upon its own religious principles, which will indeed build a very, very different nation with priorities clearly in a very different place to India. Now, Dr. Grail, as a final question, I believe you wanted to just talk about the Anand Karaj. We're going to change the subject slightly. And I know you wanted to talk about the Anand Karaj, the wedding ceremony that we covered in the Perspectives programme a couple of days ago. Is that right?
Yeah, I want to thank you for bringing that up. And I think you explained very well. I think I did not understand the way you explained before. After you explained, I think I learned a lot and your emphasis. So Anand Karaj, how did Anand Karaj started? The marriage in India was a ceremony by Brahman, and the Brahman will speak something people didn't understand, and then they think, okay, it's done. So there was a Sikh named Rindava. This is during third Guru's time. He defied Brahman. He said, I don't believe in you. So he became Sikh, and he used to go to third Guru for guidance and join the Sikh society of that time. When his daughter was of marriage age, the Brahman said, okay, I'm not going to marry your daughter. You go to your Guru. And he was very offended and traumatized. He goes to Guruji. He says, this is the situation. My daughter is marriageable age. We want to proceed, and this Brahman is insulting me. And he said, I am not going to accept this Brahman's dominance. My daughter marries or not marries is a secondary issue. If you can help arrange his marriage, I will appreciate. So in the audience, in the Sangat, was a fourth Guru. He was not a Guru yet. He was son-in-law of third Guru. So third Guru, Guru Amar Das Ji, asked Guru Ram Das, who became Guru actually after, they used to go and arrange this marriage. So for that marriage, these four lamas was written by Guru Ram Das Ji, and that's the beginning of Sikh tradition. See, it is from all the way from first Guru to 10th, I think the thought process has been going away from Brahmanism. So this is the story I learned, and I think you explained well. I think what you explain is a very important. Okay, are we marrying, believing in Sikh tradition and spirituality and all that? Are we doing as a cultural extravaganza? And I think we need to go back. We need to go back, have a focus on spirituality and not ruining ourselves, spending ridiculous amount of money and then failing. So I think your emphasis, the way you explained was very well, and I hope people understand. I send that video to all my friends, and I like to thank you for that.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm very pleased that it was very well received. As I said in the show, actually, when I talked about it, it was very much an educational journey for myself, probably as much as everybody else. So it was fascinating to cover it in such detail. But there, we must leave it, and we will be talking again with Dr. Groel soon to continue our discussion. But Dr. Groel, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us once again today.
Thank you. Just give me a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Indeed. And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.